sensitive. Hi, I'm Kathy Zalewski with Realty One Group Peak in Bozeman, Montana.
And I'm Kaila Henry, also at Realty One Group Peak in Bozeman, Montana.
So Kaila and I have put out some kind of serious videos lately, or more instructional, and we thought it might be fun to just do a couple that are for entertainment purposes. Yeah. Although you might learn something, but I think that you might find these entertaining. And we're going to call this episode Horror Stories. So in real estate, just about anything can happen. And today, in fact, I had 2 closings, and the buyers were moving into both before the property recorded. It's not horrible, but it's not great. So along those lines, strange things can happen, and we've got some good stories for you. Why don't you go ahead, Kaila?
I guess first thing that comes to mind for myself, we had a listing downtown Bozeman. It was, about a $1.4 million townhome. And we did get a call saying, wondering if there was a showing going on. And we were like, oh, nobody should be in the house. And sure enough, someone was trying to break in or had gained access to the home. And they were trying to kind of live there for a bit. I think they were maybe there for just a couple hours, so it wasn't too bad, but nonetheless very disconcerting, and really, really glad that the neighbors were keeping an eye on the place for our clients. That can happen.
And didn't you say that they had an alarm?
They did. There was a security system in place. And so again, I don't know how what I heard was that they gained access through a basement window. So it was, there was basement and there was a window, and I guess they were able to slide one of the windows open and get into the home. They had moved some artwork around and maybe put a couple things down, some of their own things down on the coffee table. And it's maybe smelled a little funny, like they were smoking something in there. And so we were really grateful for the neighbors for keeping an eye on the place. And then, of course, our clients called Bozeman Police Department, and she met them down there very quickly. Obviously, if our client was not in town, we would have absolutely gone down there to meet with the police and kind of be boots on the ground if it was an absentee seller. But she was in town and available to go do that, so we let her handle it. But
yeah, I think that
freaky.
Yeah, and when it's not uncommon for properties to be vacant when they're for sale, and the sign in the front yard is kind of an indicator. So to have a good relationship with your neighbors, or have a great agent that will, do drive-bys every once in a while.
And we do. For our vacant properties, I'm visiting them at least once a week, right? And especially if there's no showings happening or no inspections, or again, knowing people are not at the house, I'm absolutely trying to make a point to go out there at least once a week. Now, of course, a week can be a long time if someone is living in the house, but we do what we can to help keep the property secure, but sometimes it happens. And even in small Bozeman, I mean, to me, I would have told you, no way, no one ever breaks into homes in Bozeman. They do. So Please do keep your doors locked. This goes back to something we've talked about and for some of our listing videos, where I have clients that say, well, we never lock our house. Do we really need to keep it locked when, the home's on the market? And I'm like, I always recommend it. Lock all of your doors, all of the windows if possible. Because again, that sign in the ground, unfortunately, is a little bit of a flag that the home may or may not be occupied. And we just really want to make sure that your property is really secure. And so again, always keeping things locked up, and agents will always lock up as they found it. That's I would say the standard is we leave it as we find it.
Right.
So if we do find a door left unlocked, I'm not going to lock that, because I wouldn't want to lock anybody out of their home. But typically locking all doors, making sure things are secure.
Yeah, for sure. Along those lines, I have a horror story, and some of these are from a different market, which isn't necessarily relevant, but so I had a listing. It was actually a couple doors down from my own personal home. They were neighbors that had decided they were going to move to a different part of town and listed with me, but the mother was at home with her 3 small children, and security was an issue for her, and so she always kept everything locked. And one of the reasons that they chose me as a realtor was because I explained to them how I could use the lockbox to make sure that there's no way that anybody can get in the house without permission from me.
Yeah.
Well, so she calls me from 3 doors down and is freaking out because somebody is trying to get into her house. And clearly I had not told them that we would have a showing or anything like that. So sure enough, as soon as I get off the phone with her, maybe I was still on the phone with her, I get a call from an agent who's like, hey, yeah, I'm in front of your listing and I was going to show it, but I can't get into your lockbox. And I'm like, it's because you don't have an appointment and you're not supposed to be there. So got him to go away, but it was not great for my seller. She was really upset, actually, and for good reason. But I think that's another one of our jobs is to keep the property secure.
And it is traumatizing. So, I mean, when I was renting, I actually had one of our landlords come into our home. Yes, we were renting from her, but landlords need to provide 24 hours notice before they want to access the property. She did not do that. She just walked in. We were moving out, but she walked into the home, and we were there. We were hanging out, and she just showed up with people. It felt very intrusive. It's something I can still feel in my body, what it feels like to have somebody walk into your home unannounced. And again, no danger. She was a little old lady. Like, it wasn't, no malintent, was behind it, but it was scary to have someone just walk into your home unannounced.
You're suddenly reminded, whether like a rental situation, that it isn't your home, or when you're selling, that more or less my house is now open to the public, and so strange things might happen.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel good because your home is so much your space, a safe area, and again, just very personal. So yeah, obviously we do everything we can to avoid that, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
So
certainly some other horror stories are when,
water related.
Yeah. So I had a great couple that I had worked with to sell their home on one end of town, and they were buying a home on the other end of town. And the woman had some health issues where they really wanted to be sure that the property was free of mold. So we got our property disclosure statement, and it said that there had been a small leak from the refrigerator supply line. And the seller had provided us also with a insurance history report for the previous 5 years that they'd owned the home. And on the insurance history report, it alluded to a like $65,000 claim.
And how much was the purchase price of the home?
The property was like $200,000. Like
so sizable.
Yeah,
that's
nearly a third of what the entire home cost. Well, come to find out, the couple that lived there had been in Minnesota for the summer, and yes, the supply line on your refrigerator is quite small, 7 inch, maybe less, I don't know, small, but it had been leaking for like months, and then the house was in Arizona, so like it's 120 degrees, and this water is just flowing and then mold
evaporating,
and so and they ended up buying the house, and I think they still own it. But so
certainly information that, from where I sit, did not sound like it was disclosed properly, because there's a very big difference between a small leak in the water line and our fridge water line leaked for 4 months, and it was unattended during the summer, so we had to have a $60,000 remediation done. Those are two very different things, obviously, and important to know the difference when you're disclosing it. For sellers, please disclose. But also for your buyers, so there's no surprises.
Yeah, no, and I mean, horror stories are just like, that was it was a medical concern. We ended up doing there was a company that like you could drill in the wall and take air samples from in between the drywall between the studs. Yeah. So if there was any residual mold growing or whatever, they could find that out. And the sellers ended up paying for that testing, and it was not cheap. But sorry, I bumped the table. But
she's always yelling at me for doing that.
Anyway, so it was, but it's one of those deals where you suddenly are like, oh my God. And then you really want to make sure it's right, because this would have been a major health hazard.
Yeah, had it not been handled by licensed professionals who did it.
You just kind of go, ugh. It's like finding, in California, not here, but because I had a lot of clients from California when I worked in Arizona, like roof rats. Like, really, that is a bad thing. You don't want any kind of those infestations. Oh my God, that reminds me of another story. Okay.
I have one in Bozeman. This was a house I was hoping to show. So there's a home that came up on Bridger Drive. I would say that's a pretty sought after little segment of of road in our area, and there was a home, and it said that there was, some mold growing. Call the listing agent for details. And so of course I called him because the home seemed to be priced really well, of course.
Yay.
So everybody was really excited about it, and come to find out that their hot water heater had sprung a leak, like one of the valves, and so there was steam going into the home for couple months. I don't know. I think over the winter, because the home was vacant for the winter months, right? It was a seasonal residence for the owners, and steam was just going into the home all month. And so there was mold. It's the worst mold I've ever seen. Agents who actually did show it have said that when they stepped in, they immediately felt their lungs and everything get really tight. That's really bad mold.
That's bad.
So you could see it on the walls. I think they actually they had to take the home off the market. And I almost think
set it on fire.
I think it was almost condemned or something. I'm not totally sure how that ended up, but it was really bad. And I think there were maybe some buyers that were willing to potentially take it as is, but then again, it was so bad that I'm not even sure the materials were salvageable, right? So your studs and everything, I think it was just that bad where it truly needed to be demoed and just by the lot. I don't think that's actually happened because I drive by and eyeball the house. I'm not sure what's going on with it, but again, water, steam, all of that. And to me, we're not really a mold prone area. Yes, we can have construction mold, but generally we're in a dry climate, so not too worried about it. Something we're always having home inspectors look for, but these are some really bad cases.
Oh my God, that I literally light a match.
Yeah.
I have, I think this is really funny. So I had a great couple clients, and they were grandparents, and they had bought a home from me, and then they decided that maybe that wasn't it, and so we started kind of looking at like new construction and model homes, and they happened to be babysitting their grandson that day, and what a day. And so this again was in Arizona, and it was probably pretty warm, and they were feeding the kid probably something not awesome for
Tasty.
it. Right, a great snack in the car in between houses that we went to. But so Grandpa kind of had him under his arm and was kind of like, spinning him around. Oop, I hit the table again. And spinning him around, and we're in this model home, and all of a sudden the kid throws up like all
Mid-spin.
over the model home. Yeah, like spewed it like always. And I'm like, oh my God, don't worry, it's fine.
Not a big deal. Not.
I'm sure I have something in my car to clean it up. I'm a realtor. I carry a little bit of everything in the car. So yeah. Oh, that reminds me of another story. But I showed these people probably 100 homes.
Wow.
And every time, and we discussed this in what proper buyer etiquette is, but every time they had a little kid, and every time the kid had to go to the bathroom, number 2,
That's hard.
At least one of every listing every time we went out.
Oof.
Yeah,
That's
not
hard.
okay.
It's
I mean, like, come on. And then they ended up like ghosting me after like a year.
Not okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, those are
Small rants.
couple bodily fluid related stories I've got. Yeah. Okay.
We had one in our office, and this one's hard because I'm not really sure what you do to prevent this, but it definitely raised some red flags for me, where an agent in our office had a home on the market, and it was vacant, and all of a sudden, of course, the neighbors call her, and they're like, hey, did this close? Because we see online that it's still showing as active, but there's like 3 moving vans and trucks and a whole bunch of people starting to try and move stuff into this home. And in fact, I think this gal had called a locksmith to get access to the home. And so what had ended up happening was some woman had gone down to the courthouse and come up with some sort of document for herself where she had recorded an interest in the home. She got that to be filed and recorded at the courthouse, so it's part of the public record. And she used that to then go to the locksmith and say, hey, I own this home, please unlock the doors. Locksmiths, they're not verifying anything. Maybe they should, but they're not. She was gaining access to a home that was not hers based off of a document. I mean, it was forged, but it was also real in the sense that you really can go down to the courthouse and record liens on people's property in your name or your business or something like that. And maybe I shouldn't be too clear because you give crazy people ideas.
Don't teach people how to do this.
But it is something that can happen. And so the agent ended up, she, had to help them hire a lawyer and get this cleared and prove that there was no validity. It didn't take too long because the document was a little crazy, just like the person who filed it.
Right.
But she had scammed her whole church into helping her move her stuff to Montana. I think she was from Idaho.
Oh my
so
God.
across borders, right? I mean, like, big deal. To a home she doesn't own, but she believes she did or wanted to. I don't know.
So home
but horror
theft is
story.
real. I mean, it sounds like it can't happen, but you see the ads on TV. It can happen.
It can.
So
just doesn't ever hurt to, I don't know,
do a title search.
do a title search for your home and just kind of check in on how things are going. I had friends where there was a solar lien placed on one of their names.
Oh.
Totally fraudulent. Again, they had never had anything to do with solar, but when they were going to take out a HELOC to start a business, they realized it was there, and she's like, we have no idea what this is, which is super frustrating and unfortunate because it can cause a huge delay or a small delay. Either one, it's annoying. Obviously, just something else to have to deal with, which is frustrating, and it does end up sometimes costing you money too to hire a
legal
lawyer
fees.
to clear it. It's a huge bummer. So, again, nothing to really. I don't know how you prevent that, but just being aware of it.
Well, and another, I would say, thing that you hear about that is real is wire fraud.
Big time.
I had a listing. I was a listing agent. The buyer's agent called me and said, we've got a problem. The $86,000 that the woman who was buying this listing was going to put down got
rerouted.
Yeah, she got a email from the title company, but it wasn't actually the title company. It was illegitimate, and so her money got funneled somewhere else.
And something to note about wire fraud. I mean, once your money's gone, it's gone.
Usually, it's pretty gone.
You really can't get that back or recoup it in any sort. So we always recommend calling the title company. Your agent should, of course, let you know who your title company is and how to get a hold of them. Make sure you, again, using an independent number, so never calling the number that's in the email telling you where to send the money to. Right? Independently
Look it up
verify.
on Google or something.
Call your agent. Just taking that couple minutes. I know it feels annoying. I know it feels redundant. But there's a reason we make those recommendations, again, because unfortunately it does happen even in Bozeman, Montana, and our small town surrounding.
Yeah.
It is a real thing, and once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. So when we make I have another horse story. But when we make a big deal over telling you silly things like, hey, don't quit your job and don't go buy a new car and don't open another line of credit. I did have a guy who was buying his first home, and he really, really, really wanted a new Traeger grill. And he had signed this was in a different state, so he had signed his papers 2 days in advance of actual closing day. And the lender called me up that in between day, signed one day, and then we were going to close the next day. The lender calls me and is like,
problem.
He took out a new $5,000 credit card at Home Depot. So that's unsecured debt, right? It's revolving credit. It's not good. His margins were kind of tight. These are back in the days where people were buying a home with 0% down, and so they really don't like you taking out more lines of credit. But he did it because he had to have that Traeger grill to be able to cook his first meal on in his new house.
Which, I mean, that's awesome. I would want that
right.
too.
I would have bought you a Traeger
that's
grill.
That's amazing. And we're not meaning to come down on him. But again, you got to think things through, or again, check in with your realtor. Well, we will never make fun of you for asking any questions.
No,
I'll say that. Please ask.
But please know that if we say things that you think are silly, they're not silly. We're being serious.
Yeah. Well, and also we don't say them because we think you're dumb or something. We've lived it and experienced it, right? So it seems to be common knowledge, or to me, I'm like, why on earth would you do that? You just maybe don't know. And so we just want to make sure that you have all the information.
Or buyers that are like, yeah, I have the money. And then when they check to verify their funds, where their down payment is coming from, it's like, whoa. How come you suddenly, where'd this $30,000 come from, out of nowhere? You had $2,800 in your bank account, for the last 12 months, and now all of a sudden you have 30 grand. Oh yeah, grandma gave that to me. Okay, well, we need to document that.
And again, you'd think, well, what's the problem with having
more
money, right? Because that doesn't seem to make sense. The issue is a lender always needs to verify where funds are coming from and make sure that it isn't outstanding debt, right? Like
money
your
laundering.
grandma's not expecting to be paid back on that money that she gave you,
yes,
or money laundering, or anything
drug
like
money,
that.
something that you had under your mattress for 6 years, and then you just decided to turn it into the bank.
So same thing, actually. I've heard of this one where a client at closing, right? You usually need to bring a check, buyers, for your cash to close, right? You are usually responsible for bringing that down payment and those funds. I've heard of a client actually show up with a briefcase of cash, which is unfortunately not allowed.
Right. Yeah. No.
So he had to go season that money at the bank, and
which isn't that doesn't happen overnight.
It delayed closing.
Right. You have to. Sometimes they'll say 3 months, depending on how much money. If it's like $5,000, probably not. A week. But if it's like $100,000, $150,000, $300,000, they're not just going to be like, oh, okay, that was mattress money, no problem. That's not how that works.
I know.
And I actually have a lot of friends. People in the service industry that make tips, a lot of times they don't put it in the bank, and suddenly they want to buy a house and they literally have $70,000 in cash. That doesn't work. So horror stories. I mean, and that's kind of a good horror story. If you got $70K in cash sitting around, it's all right. But it is kind of interesting. Do you have my one of my most favorite horror stories, and it's more kind of personal horror story, but so my very first home that I sold back in Wisconsin, it was a very interesting deal. I wrote letters, and somebody in Florida called me and said, hey, you sent a letter that you could find a buyer for my house in 24 hours. But I was pretty confident, new realtor. But it was a home on a lake.
Blissfully unaware of the perils of this job.
But it was a home on a lake. So I was pretty confident I could find a buyer. I had a lot of friends in the area that were interested in making those kinds of purchases. And this is like back in 2004 or 5, where everybody was buying extra houses. So anyway, as it turns out, I called like 3 friends that looked at the property, and one of them wrote an offer immediately, willing to close cash in like 20 days or something like that. The seller was elated. Oh yeah, no, it was great. Seller was elated, and then because this was a lakefront property, it's very common for us to do, well, it would come up in a title search anyway, but to do like a survey. And what we found was that there were like 3 different encroachments on the lot. And because this was a lakefront property, that's a big deal. Your amount of frontage can dictate what you can or can't do with that property. And
it's also clouded title some, right?
Well, right. So there were 4 commercial properties. This was like long, skinny with a little bit of frontage on the lake. And then these 4 properties along the side of it were frontage on the highway. So those were all commercial properties. So the seller was like, I don't know what to do. How are we going to fix this with these 3 different people? And my buyer, who was local, was like, you know what? I can fix it. I know all these people. We'll work it out. I'm not worried about it. Like, if the line moves this way and that way, the way I want to use a property, it's not going to affect me that much. And if it takes me 2 years to get it right, in the meantime, I'll still be able to use this property for 2 years. Yeah. So he was okay with saying, yes, I understand that there are these lot line issues. And my seller was like, hey, if he's okay, I'm okay. But I'm going to bring an attorney. And and then my buyer said, and I'm going to bring my attorney.
I'll bring mine.
Right. And then my broker was like, we better have our attorneys there. And then the title company was like, we're going to bring some attorneys too. So it was a room that was about the same size as this one. So I don't know, 15 by 10, something like that. And there were 25 people in there. And everybody was chewing their fingernails, like all worried about it. And my friend that bought the property, still owns the property to this day, was like, what's everybody so concerned about? And I'm like, well, I don't, they all want to see you sign it for real and know that I'm not coercing you or something. But yeah, my very first closing, there were literally like 25 people in a little tiny room like this, because of course my very first closing was not straightforward. Right. I know.
They
you
never
never, Kathy. Right.
They never
but, like,
are.
A little convoluted. But anyway, all good now. So, so again, horror stories in real estate are common, but generally we can work through them.
You can. I mean, that's always the thing that we'll say is if you're working with, competent people on either side of it, you can usually get through it because there is usually some sort of solution, or it maybe makes sense to, get it done, right? I mean, I'm thinking of the property you had out in Four Corners that had, the 10% ownership that came out of nowhere. And I mean, that to me is a huge... It's a huge
not
deal.
The only one like that I've done. Though.
I know, but like that's a huge deal. But again, I don't think had they been working with another agent, I mean, you were the one that tracked the person down, got them the payoff, and told your seller, hey, if you want to sell the property, this is what it takes. Like, there's no way around this. And again, unfortunately, it's not exactly the news you want to share with your own seller, your own client who you're supposed to be advocating for, but it's also the reality of the situation. And so being able to help them understand,
well, title stuff, a lot of people, title stuff can be very scary, but generally it can be worked out, whether it requires tracking someone down or tracking their heir or their personal representative that was the executor of their estate. Or tracking down a 97-year-old blind woman across the country that has to sign off on some like nickel-sized piece of land that wasn't included in the changing of the property over the years. Yeah, I've had it. Yep, it was good. Got her to the attorney so that she could sign off. And everybody always wants to get paid in these scenarios. So just sometimes that does cost the seller a little bit. But once you get it cleared up, then it's clear.
Yeah, and again, there's no way around it. If you are truly wanting to sell your property, it's going to be a problem for almost any buyer. And again, depends on the problem and what's coming up. But just knowing there's usually a solution to a lot of these crazy horror stories. Again, you can fix the water leaks and get things remediated and still move on to closing and buy the property that has weird boundary misalignments because you feel confident in getting through it. So
I think the biggest thing is once people know what they're looking at, you can't make a good decision until you have the information required. And sometimes this information comes up halfway through the deal. And
halfway through the deal, not because sometimes people are maybe hiding a few things, which is unfortunate and to me never a good move because again, it will come out. What feels the worst is when it does feel like it's hidden.
Right.
So to me, disclosing what you can, right? Anything you have knowledge of, but then some things you just don't know.
Right.
And you will find out through the title search or as you try and sell.
Well, right. And that's just it. And like in some of this title stuff that we were talking about, that's why you buy title insurance. Because if it ends up costing you a lot of money to rectify the situation, there will have been title insurance provided to you by the previous owner and that you will provide to the next owner moving forward so that these issues can be taken care of. But I think, I guess it's funny because we titled this horror stories and some of them are really silly but some of them are a little bit frightening, but truly
all of these properties we're talking about, I'm going to say with the exception of the Bridger Drive property, have closed. And that one maybe even did close. I just didn't have the buyer or know the seller. So I don't know what happened with that one. But
eventually they had to do something about what was there. So And again, all of these ones we've moved through and worked with and have happy clients on either side of it. Right. So if you have any questions or any horror stories impending that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear them. You can always put them in the comments. We really are grateful for you watching our channels and we'd love to see your comments and
hope you get something out of it. I don't know
whether it's a laugh or whatever. But please subscribe and like. We have a couple more funny ones coming up that I'm kind of excited about. The things that we do that aren't our job.
That's a good one too.
Like walking dogs and stuff like that. But if it needs to be done, we'll get it done. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.
Bye.